Hi, welcome back and welcome to another green screen tutorial. In this lesson we are looking at transparency and how to prevent transparency in our green screen projects using the core map feature of the keying node. And to show you what I mean, let me first show you the quick project that I made for this tutorial. We have our actress dancing with a transparent cloth, which is fine and that all works well, but we have this problem where we can see the background through the actress's skin, which is something we need to fix, and to do that we'll use a core map, and the effect of that will be like this, where you can see the skin and the body is now all fixed, and we still retain the transparency of the cloth, which is exactly perfect. So let's jump back into Blender. Before we do anything though, we're going to need the green screen camera plates from hollywoodcamerawork.com/greenscreenplates.html, and we want to scroll down to the middle of the bottom page to the file named Godiva Close. We just download the clip and open it up from our file manager. We just extract those files to a space on our hard drive, and we're ready to start properly then. Okay, so first let's jump into Blender and sort out our files before we can use them. Let's go up into this top panel and go to the compositing window, and we can get rid of these two bottom windows because we don't really need them. We're just going to be using the nodes. So if I close these, there we go. And now if we make sure we have our nodes selected, click compositing nodes, and then click use nodes and backdrop, and then we can delete the render layer node that comes in by default because we're not doing any 3D work in this particular scene. Now we can go down to add and choose a input and an image. Connect that to the compositing node, and if we press Ctrl Shift click we get our viewer node, and then we need to open up the file that we've just extracted, and if we do that, there we go, and we can see we have a nice image sequence already laid out. So we just need to click on the first one. I'll switch it back to this default view. If I click on the first one and then press open image, we have our image, the compositor. You can see it in the backdrop there. Okay, now we need to switch from single image to image sequence and change the frames from 1 to 349, which is the number of frames for this particular scene. And now we can scrub through and we can see that all the frames have been imported, which is good, but you can see that we have the wrong aspect ratio for the clip because Hollywood Camera Works compress their files to this size. So we need to build a proxy for later on when we come to do the core map, otherwise it's not going to work, at least not properly anyway. So we need to make this file into a nice 1920 by 1080 size, and to do that we just drop in a scale node, change it from relative to render size, and we can render out our settings. We can keep it at 50%, but I'm going to put it up to 100%. The mask at the end will adjust, but I don't want to take the chance because things do go wrong in Blender, and I would not like to do this tutorial again. Okay, so just send it out as a PNG file to your temporary file, click animation, and off we go. Great, now once we've got that we can start the actual compositing, so we can forget about that little file that we've just made for the time being and make a bit of space and bring in our matte keying node. We'll just drop that in after the scale node, and the first thing you'll notice, our key colour is white by default and it's taken out everything in our scene that it appears to be white, so we need to fix that. We just click the colour and choose the pipper, and we'll just sample an area in the green, and as you can see it's done an amazing job already. We have the blue cloth is nice and transparent, but you can see around the edges we still have some of this guff where it hasn't quite done the job on the green. So if we take a look at our map view, just by Control Shift clicking, that'll show us what we have left, and you can see the dirty greyness around the edge of the scene. So to fix it we just need to adjust the clip black, and we can pull that out slightly until that disappears. Okay, so we've got rid of the green, and we've got rid of a bit too much green because under the arms and around the edges of the model's body where the green light has cast onto the body, we've got some transparency happening there. So in order to fix that, normally we would use the clip white function and get a solid matte from that, but we can't do that because of the scarf that we need to keep semi-transparent. If we use the clip white feature, it will turn that into a solid piece and it wouldn't show the background through. So what we need to do to fix it is to switch over and start building the core matte. Okay, so now we're in our motion tracking workspace. We can begin. Just click open to get the file, and mine's on my desktop where I saved it earlier. And this is the file that, if you remember, is the one that we did earlier, the one with the correct aspect ratio. So just click the first one and press open clip, and that brings it in. Now if we click prefetch to gather it all into the RAM, or at least as much as we can fit into the RAM. I'm just using a little laptop at the moment, so I'm not going to get it all. Now, about half the clip, but that's okay because we're not doing any actual motion tracking, so it's not going to affect anything. But we are short on the actual frame length for the clip, so we'll just change that to 349. And so now let's just position our clip so we can see what we're doing. And we need to change our mode from tracking into the mask layer, so we'll click the tracking and choose mask, click add new, and we'll rename it to something sensible. I'll call this core matte, and that'll avoid us any confusion if we have lots of masks in our scene and we know which one we're using and what. Okay, so previously when we would do our masking, we would go around the whole body adding points here, there and everywhere until we'd got the whole body covered, and then we would go through and animate the mask as one whole thing. But there's an easier way to do that, and that is to do it in sections. We'll take, say, the lower arm, then we do the upper arm and combine the masks, and then we do the hand and combine those, and then we can do the opposite side and any other parts of the body that need doing, which just makes things easier. So to get started, let's just do the first one. We'll click plus on the mask layers and rename it to, and this is going to be the upper arm, even though it's lower in the scene. So we're just typing upper arm, and I'm going to define it as the right hand side because it's on her right, stating the obvious there. Anyway, if we hold down shift now and press the left mouse button, it will give us our first point, and we just drag out the handle, making sure that point is still selected. We'll click and click again, and I've just forgotten to drag out the handles, which is awkward, so I'll just Control Z that, hold Control, Shift and drag to get the handle, because it's very awkward to get the handles afterwards. It can be done obviously, but it's easier if you have the handles in the first place. Right, we just click around the model, drag the handle out and roughly position the mask into place. And I'm just going around. Once I'm inside the body, I don't really need to position it too much. Right, and this shoulder bit though, at the moment it's covered in the hair, but as we know later on in the video, she's going to be showing her shoulders. So we put the mask in a rough position and carry on around the model. Got that, just position it nicely. Add one more point, drag out the handle, there we go. And now if we just close that loop off by pressing toggle cyclic in the mask tools on the side panel, that just closes the whole thing off. So now if we zoom in a bit, and we can adjust the handles. And we just want to do this as precise as we can. Get the whole of the model's arm in there without any of the outside where it's supposed to be transparent. And I like these handles because they are ideal for this kind of curved form. We can just move them around and adjust them by dragging the handle out or pushing it in to alter the shape, and moving it left and right to alter the angle of the thing. And once we've finished getting a good approximation, we want to turn on the auto keyframing. That's the little red button there. So when we move, if we move the mask, I'll just double tap A to select everything, and G just to move it slightly so that it puts a keyframe in place. And we want to go to the start frame. We should have been on the start frame right at the beginning, but I messed up there, but it's not going to cause a major problem, just something to remember in future. Okay, so now that we've updated, we want to jump ahead 10 frames, and just with everything selected, press G to move it in position, press R to rotate it, and you can see you can rotate the whole of the mask as well as move individual points. So now let's fine-tune everything. You get as much as that body, and you can take a little bit more care than I'm doing here. You always want to be as precise as possible with this kind of thing to avoid undue tweaking later. I'm just going to move that back into position. You jump ahead 10 frames at a time by holding down shift and the up arrow, and equally hold shift and the down arrow to jump back 10 frames. Okay, and on each jump you just want to adjust the mask back into position, do any tweaks, and each time you move a handle, because we've got auto keyframing on, that's going to put the keyframe in for each handle for its position and rotation. Just need to drag that out slightly and move the whole handle. Oops. It's a bit fiddly sometimes. You can of course change the handle types by holding down T and getting the regular Bezier handles or vector handles depending on the model. You might have sharp angles where vector handles are more appropriate, but in organic shapes like this I generally find that these single point handles they usually work pretty well for most of the time. Excuse me. Just going through tweaking and tweaking, and yeah, this takes a bit of time, so put some music on, put your headphones on and just steady away nice and patiently. It will take time obviously, but we just pop through 10 frames at a time, tweaking as we go. And rather than just repeating myself telling you to do the same thing for the next 500 frames, I'm going to time-lapse through it quickly until we get to the next step. So just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll see you in a second. So while this is playing through, I'll just explain one or two things. Remember, just as you keep going through until you get to the end of the video, remember to go back to the start and play it through and watch for any skipping and jumping of the mask as it goes through the scene, and pause and adjust the it's an animation of the mask. Adjust the animation as you go along, tweaking and things until you have it pinned nicely against the model's arm all the way through the scene. Sometimes the model moves faster than other times, so the animation it goes out of time, kind of, if you see what I mean. Anyway, that aside, what's going to happen now is this mat is it works differently from the garbage mat, which, if you remember from the previous tutorial, just turns everything inside the mat to black and makes sure that nothing shows through from the background, which is what you want from the garbage mat. But the core mat doesn't just make everything pure white, it retains the information from the key, so all the colour spilling and things that happen to the model that's not in the mask is retained within the core, which is quite handy. Saves you having to redo any colour spilling, and very useful feature. Anyway, much boring conversation, so let's move on to the next section now. Right, so once we're done, we've got all our mask in place and it's all looking good. Just, well, apart from that bit. There we go, that's all fixed. Now we come over to our mask layers again, and we simply add a new mask and call it forearm right. And now when we come to do our mask again, the mask that we've got in the way already, we can just simply hide that so it's not getting in the way of anything. It's not causing confusion with all the extra handles and things. And if we drag down to our next section and start doing exactly the same thing, control clicking, just creating a whole new mask. Don't forget to drag those handles out. Oops. Just bring it round and bring it in so that it overlaps with the previous mask, or where the previous mask would be. And oops, it's a bit fiddly. We'll tidy that up in a minute. So that's alright for now. You can see if we had to do the whole body, there would be a lot of dragging and scrolling and zooming in, which can get really confusing, and you're bound to miss bits doing it that way. So this is why doing it in sections is a lot easier. It's still going to take the same amount of well, it'll actually be quicker, I think, because you're not fiddling around on every scene. You can concentrate on one section at a time. And toggle cyclic just to close that off. Okay, and now if we look at our other mask, you can see that it's overlapped nicely. There's a nice region there, and that will just help prevent any gaps happening between the two layers. But you do need to make sure that the merge add is selected on the blend type here. The other blend modes will give different effects to your mask, some of which will just leave a big gap in the thing, which is what you want on certain masks, but on this type of mask we want it to be one homogeneous whole mask. So okay, so with that done and in place, we can get started and go through and do exactly the same as we did with the other mask, making sure everything is in its right place, and then we do that around the whole body. Literally just go around, repeat that process. Once we finish this mask, we'll put one on the hand, exactly the same. We add a new mask layer, make a hand, then we'll go on to the other side, make a new mask layer, and eventually you'll end up with this. As you can see, if I turn on each of these masks now, I've got one on the left arm, the right hand, the lower arm and the upper arm that I showed you initially, and one on the right hand side of the body, and they go around just nice, fitting closely. You see they don't need to overlap on the body because it's not necessary. You can see some of the markers are going off the screen, which is fine, they're just moved out of the way. It's all looking absolutely fantastic. And you'll see if I press Alt and A, or the masks there are holding nicely against the form of the body. They're sticking to the hand there, keeping out of the way of the scarf. Fairly close in most cases. There will be some additional tweaking to do, not too much though, but most of the time we'll be able to get away with that. The colour spill will hide most of the defects, so we don't have to worry too much about it. We will see once we've composited it into our background whether or not it's going to work nice. Okay, so having said that, let's pause this and switch over to our compositing window. And everything is just as we left it, which is ideal. So we just tweak a few things. Now we need to put the background in first, so we'll do that by pressing, by going to add, and we want an input image, and we're going to bring in an image sequence. You could bring in a movie for this if you want, that's fine. I'm going to my temp file and I'm going to just take a small clip of some film I took at the back of a friend's house, and I just find the start of it, I've named it all as clip 01. There it is, clip 01. If I click that and press enter, and now first thing we need to do is match the frame rate. So image sequence, frames, and 349, and then now we need to connect it up to the rest of the scene. So we'll go to Shift A, add. I need the color. Where's the color? Color. Oh, up at the top. Color alpha over, because we're putting an alpha image on top of a normal image. So connect the green screen to the alpha over node in the bottom socket and the background into the top socket. Press shift click and we'll see what we have. And there we go, our model is now casually overlaid in front of a barnyard farmhouse thing, which is all very nice. But you can see the problem that we were going to have with the transparency on the model. The green is showing through, and so the background is showing through the model. So now we need to fix that with our core matte, and that's easily done. We can just press Shift A, and under input we choose mask, and select the lid. I'm scrolling a bit. Select the drop down menu and choose the correct mask from the menu. There's only one, it's the core matte, and we plug it into the core matte socket, and immediately the compositing updates, and we can see the effect of the mask on our model. If I jump back a frame, you can see how nicely it's gotten through. It's cut everything into place. If I click anti-aliasing on the mask, it smooths that off rather nicely, and it's all looking quite nice. And essentially that's it. We can leave it at that, or we can go and do a little bit further. We can throw in a blur node and blur the background a bit if we want to create some fake depth of field, or we can soften the edges of our model to get rid of some of the lines. And it's not really a compositing tutorial, so we're not going to go too in depth with things like color correcting and all that kind of thing. But what we will do is we will take some of these edges and we will just soften them off a bit, make them look a bit nicer, give it a more kind of, well, a nice soft dreamy kind of effect. Yeah. So yeah, let's do that. Go to add filter, blur, and we'll plug that just after the keying node, and then we want to just make a bit of space. Want to add a color mix node, drop that in. There's a plugin coming soon that will fix all this moving around of nodes. I'm quite looking forward to it. Okay, so we'll plug the output of the keying node into the bottom of the mix node, and then we'll change the blur to 10 pixels, 20 pixels. We'll start with 20 pixels and see where we go from there. And that's not too bad. You can see the effect now. The edges of the model have softened off nicely. It's a bit too harsh, but it looks good for a base. No, we're going to yeah, change it back down to 10 pixels like I originally thought. That'll do its thing, and yeah, there we go, that's it. So now our model is in complete focus, and yeah, the edges there and the edges of the head is just a slight touch of blur, which also fixes things elsewhere, which I'm not going to mention. But we have a nice soft edge, and we can move in and we can start animating. So all we need to do now is just hit the animation button and see what we get. And I'll leave that to do its rendering, and I'll be back in a second when it's done. Of course, this is going to take forever, so see you in a moment. And there we go with the final result. Our actress is moving nicely integrated into the scene. Everything looks good. There's a little bit of colour correcting that we can do afterwards, obviously. She's still got a slight green tint on her, but other than that, there's everything looks fine. The mask is working properly and it's all looking really good. There's a slight glitch at the end there, but we can always go back and tweak the mask again if we need to. So that's it for that lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you understood it. If you have any problems, leave a comment in the section below, and we'll try and address any issues that might crop up later. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos from the CG Jam network, and we